6:34. We'll go with 6:35, right?
Are they all 57s? I don't know. I feel like I'm 25 inside, which is what gets me
I had an
so.
electrician come by this morning
Not
and
57.
he worked for you.
Like when it comes out of my mouth. I'm
St.
like,
Dennis.
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't
Yeah.
like that, yeah.
No.
That's
Good
wrong,
guy.
that's not right.
Great guy. Yeah, he's a character. Good dude.
Like frame space.
Was that early this morning?
Yeah.
Like about
Yeah.
9 o'clock, 8
Yep.
o'clock?
Yep.
I know.
I actually saw him this morning.
But I mean, you know.
Yeah,
I
that's.
called
I mean,
him.
I don't.
Because I
Yeah,
saw
that's
his
why
van and I saw like in the St. Dennis
Like
electrician.
mobile.
I wanna
And
be
he
able to
had
do
left
the
me
stuff
like
that I
around
want
with
to
a
do.
years back,
walker,
I went to a
like,
solar company.
Yep.
No.
I guess that company went to
Yep.
function, he started his own little thing like, I think he's doing something else too
Yeah.
inside.
Yeah.
But I called him, I says, hey, how you doing? So I said, hey, if you need any help, buddy.
Yeah.
You know,
I was
so he's a
lucky I
good
was
guy,
with her.
such a nice
Yeah,
guy,
so that's,
Because
good guy.
if I was on my own, I would have been.
Yeah, you would have had trouble. Phone a friend.
I
for
really
help.
should have gone on the ambulance. I had somebody bring me home.
Oh.
Kimberly brought me home
Well,
from the trail, because I was running with the CMS one.
That's what.
Yeah.
Okay, I wasn't sure what. Well,
So she like ran to the car and she told me, "You have to take off your shoes. I couldn't take my shoes."
No, yeah.
showing the road?
Like it's.
All right. Well, welcome everybody. 6:35. We'll get started. This is a meeting of the Town Charter Committee for Thursday, September 25th, 6:30 p.m. Welcome everybody. Tonight, first on the agenda, we are still missing a couple people. And first off, before we get going on not too much, so Tolene and Sandra are not here yet. Keith, I assume that's you?
Yep.
Welcome, Keith.
Hey, nice to meet you
All
all.
right. I'm Chris Senical. I'm the chair of the board here. Been in town for about 30 years. And happy to be on this committee here for now. Been on some other boards and whatnot.
Yeah.
And it's nice to meet you. I know I've seen you around at some of these,
Yeah.
some of the meetings
Yeah,
and
it's pretty
whatnot.
cool. You guys have a
Board.
cool board and a cool charge, I guess, after 300 years and for the town being established. It's kind of neat to be part of, for you guys to even take up this opportunity.
Yeah, well, welcome.
Joe, thank you.
Happy to have you on here. And you've been sworn in too, I understand. So
Yep, sign the book.
you're
Yep.
official voting member. Terrific. Just to give you a little recap, Keith, I sent you the first 5 articles we did from January through like July.
Okay.
Those are like all pretty rough draft. It's a draft. Everything will be a draft that we'll discuss with the town at the end of completing the second half of the charter. So hopefully around the holidays, early January, we'll be able to have those discussions with the charters, get more feedback from the
Okay.
town. We did that in June, halfway through when we got that first 5 articles done. We met put surveys out there, met with the townspeople, got some feedback, finalized it all from that. Attorney Anthony Wilson and Becca Meekins. Attorney Wilson is from the, I forget the institution you're from, Anthony, but he's an attorney who's been helping us through the grant we got, helps us out, been guiding us through the whole charter process. Great, fantastic guy, great leader, and
That's a
really
big
got
deal.
these down well. And Becca Meekins also is somebody that he brought in as well. She's got a lot of history and is a town administrator and other things like that. So the two have been incredible resources for us going along here.
Yeah,
All right.
that's great.
Nice to meet you. Yes.
Meet you.
He's the new planning board representative. So terrific. And so now we kind of like starting the second half, Keith, kind of, rolling out these next articles and first item, so back to the agenda, first item is the approval of the meeting minutes. Do I have a motion to accept the minutes as prepared?
Motion to accept the
A second?
minutes as prepared.
Second, okay, thank you. Any discussion regarding the minutes? Okay, all in favor of accepting the minutes as prepared? Aye? Aye. Any nays? Hearing none, it's unanimous. All right, that one's done, great. Next item up is new business. First thing I'd like to start out, before we jump into the article, there was a little bit of an email that went around a little while back about should we continue this charter work without a town administrator? I believe the fire chief or someone from the fire department, is it the fire chief that stepped in as the interim town administrator? Do we wanna, I just want to open this discussion, get your opinions, what you guys feel like, what you think about that.
What was the
Go ahead.
backstory, Leah? with that.
So I had said maybe that if maybe Anthony could address it or something. I've I've heard chatter kind of, and it could just be the kind of some of the chatter against or the challenge with a charter in general. But the fact that we don't have a full-time permanent town administrator, should we be continuing with a charter? My response as an individual, not as a charter
Select board.
committee member or a select board member,
Yeah, okay.
is that to me, the charter is really for the people, by the people, and not from an administrator. And so while it's nice to have input from the administrator, we're working with the Collins Center more so to guide us in the process than we are any individual staff member that's kind of upholding it. And we have the town administrator bylaw that I think we kind of had decided we were pretty much pulling out of the bylaw to put in the charter. And so that was kind of it, to me, the work should be done at the committee level and then at the town level and not from an administrator level. So
Sure,
I
okay.
personally don't have that concern, but I
Okay.
wanted to open it up
Does
because
anybody else have any opinions or concerns about that?
I agree with Leah.
Okay.
My only question is, like, very optimistically, how soon would the presumed new town administrator start, and how does that align with the timeline that we have as far as finalizing the charter, putting it up for town vote? Because
I'm just to answer your question first, which I'll probably defer to Leah on this, cause she's probably more as a select board member. But I believe it's not gonna be for another 6 to 9 months at least, right?
That's
I mean,
why, yeah.
You've got a search company coming in and
So we're
the
working
vetting
with
process.
we're working with the Collins Center already for the town administrator search, the posting, Becca, if you have more information, but the posting is supposed to be live until October 1st, the job posting. Then the select board asked the Collins Center to do all the pre-screening and bring forward top candidates 2 to 5 probably, but it depends, for the select board to interview and move forward with. So I think the kind of optimistic, hopeful timeline is by and it would obviously be pending negotiations and everything along those lines,
Sort of work
would
that
be
out.
kind of by the end of the year, beginning of the new year, we would have someone in place.
That's not too
I believe
I
Becca,
thought.
if that's kind of the timeline that I think we all are kind of working with. But obviously, we want to find a good fit, and it's not, the pressure's not to find that. So again, if we're looking at,
So it's well before we'll be getting this voted on
Right.
and whatnot.
So the reason I bring it up is just more like to make the new person, let's assume like January, February they start. But that's still early.
Great time.
That's still early enough where
Yeah.
they
They could have feedback.
Yeah, and just to clue them in on it, and depending on their previous experience, they could see, okay, how is Rutland setting up the charter, and just to like orient them and all. Not that they're like handing down dictates to be like, you do this, and this, but
right,
just
but they can look through
Yeah, yeah,
it from an
yeah.
administrator
Yes.
kind of,
Yes.
because I think a lot of it does help, especially like the top level staff, which the administrator is that top level staff. So it does help them kind of understand how town's going to function. So to your point, it is helpful to
Yeah.
have that.
Yeah.
But also since we're working with the Collins Center and we have Anthony and Becca working with us on the charter, and they
Yeah.
have that experience
Yeah.
also, like
of course, yeah. Yeah.
but I wanted to open it up because like I said, I've heard chatter around town and from different pieces, and to see how the committee felt, and if Anthony or Becca
Does
had
anybody else have
anything
any
to say.
other, that was a great question, and anything else, you guys are good?
I have
You're-
like one question, and maybe we've talked about this. Just refresh me on the process of how does it go to the select board before it goes to town meeting? Does select board have to pass off on
Mr.
Yes, Anthony, please.
Anthony? It's kind of for you.
Are you talking about the charter?
Yeah, do we have to go to the select board first and they approve it or give us thumbs up, thumbs down before it goes to town meeting?
Yeah, so, and Leah may know if you're planning, if the town's planning to do something different, but let me address the first question, then I'll address the second one. So, first of all, apologies, I wasn't sure if I was supposed to respond to the email, but traditionally in these processes, it's really independent, and most town administrators, managers don't want to be that involved in the charter process. It's independent, coming from the community, that this is how they want their town administration structured. So it really is meant to be a process independent of the administrator, aside from where the administrator really gets involved is coordinating some discussions maybe with town departments, as necessary. And, if you want some input around how certain changes may affect the administrator. We've already done the administrator section. We're going in the finance section. We'll get into this in a moment, but I think you probably will be able to get some of the local information from your current department heads, and obviously you have our background and our experience with other charters and other communities to sort of mitigate that potential loss of information from the town administrator. But even a new town administrator is not going to have, what we really get from a town administrator in this process is how have things been done, and so a new town administrator wouldn't even be able to contribute that to the conversation, so to speak. And then on the second piece, the process, unless I am, and I could be misunderstanding, but this committee created by the select board is putting together the draft charter. The select board will, I think we're tracking to have it for the next town meeting, to at least have the draft prepared. So it would go to the select board, the language along with your report about why you created the charter that you did, will go to the select board for their review and inclusion as a warrant on the next for the spring town meeting. And I think that's the timeline that we're tracking for.
Gets approved that
Yeah,
way.
yeah. Okay, I couldn't remember, like, if they had to give us a final readout on it or anything like that, okay.
All right, any questions, any concerns about moving forward?
No, Becca, you want the job? We'll just skip
Yeah.
everything and do it.
Becca's been asked that too many times.
That's great.
Be a short commute, right?
I don't think that would be like hiring somebody and then having them write out and say what they want their job to be and do and be governed. So no, I think they should continue with or without a TA until we're.
I agree too, I agree. I just wanna also add one comment that I think it might help the town hire a town administrator, particularly I put myself in that prospective town administrator's position, that I know what I'm getting into, so at least if there's a draft, even though it's not been signed off in town, at least that person, he or she knows a much better framework of what their duties and responsibilities will be. And so, again, they know in 5 years, because it's new, they can tweak it. So I think that might be a little more beneficial overall from that person's point of view too, not just from the town's sake, but this person in getting the best qualified person to help us in the town, so.
And if I can just follow up with one thing that Anthony said, Rutland is relatively new to having a town administrator. I think Margaret was our first, and so I think for 10 years we've had a town administrator. And we've had a number of town administrators in that 10 years, so even that historical knowledge isn't really there because every town administrator
Been there
that
short
we've had
time.
has been there short time and done things a little bit differently and had a lot of the same challenges. But I don't think that it's not like we have this 20-year depth of knowledge of this.
Yeah.
This is kind of the process,
Yeah. Yep, okay, so I don't think we have to vote on this, but I just wanna make sure we all, Keith, any concerns, questions?
I guess I would say if the charge came from the select board, then if, it's not like the town administrator would have a decision on it, so. So I wouldn't see why all of a sudden you gotta disband. 'cause
And that's a good
it's
point, I mean, like I said before, we're soldiers, we got the orders from command to go out and do this. I mean, people grumbling, like you said, Leah, who knows where, why it's coming from. I just say we stay on our mission and follow the course and you can get it done, I mean,
But I just wanted to put it out there for us to be aware of it, and also, Anthony, I wasn't necessarily looking for you to reply to the email, I wanted to have the conversation at a meeting, so thank you for
Yeah, no, it's better off we
for-
did it here,
for
in
that
an open
input
public
and-
meeting rather
right,
than on the.
and just
Yep.
for consideration, because to make sure that we're all on board with it.
That's it, Leah. Number one thing is that we're together on this and nobody has any issues for us moving forward and we just move forward as a group, good solid group, so. All right, terrific, well, we'll go. All right, first up, is the continued discussion of town charter.
I have one quick thing that
Sure,
I
go ahead.
followed up with, sorry. And Anthony, I apologize, this is going back a little bit. I think at our last meeting, we had talked about the planning board because their current terms are 5-year elected terms
Versus 3 years.
and how that came to be. And so I got the minutes from the
1947 was it?
1947
great.
town meeting and
Really, 1947?
yeah, January 17th, 1947. And so it
Couple
was
years
warrant
ago.
article number 6, and it was to see if the town will vote to provide for the election of a planning board of 5 members to be elected at the annual town meeting in accordance with section 81A of chapter 41 general laws as amended. And that was it. And so then the motion was, or the votes were voted unanimously that the town provide for a planning board of 5 members to be elected at the annual town meeting in accordance with section 81A, chapter 41, general laws as amended. And then it said 1 for 1 year, 1 for 2 years, 1 for 3 years, 1 for 4 years, and 1 for 5 years. That's it. It never said that, because if I read 81A, chapter 41 correctly, we're also supposed to vote if they're 3-year terms or 5-year terms. This set the membership at 5 and kind of instinctively said that it's 5 because one of the members was for 5 years, but there was no specific vote to set it as 5 years. So it's always operated as 5 years. I know we had conversations just because there's been a lot of turnover on the planning board with members not fulfilling a 5-year term. So that I think was some of the conversation, is if we wanted to consider looking at the will of the town to reduce planning board terms to 3 years to be more in line with the other electeds, and provide hopefully some stability that people are fulfilling at least a full term rather than leaving after however many terms.
And how did we leave it? We left it as the 5-year, I believe, correct?
We weren't gonna
left-
talk about it yet.
We left it at the 5-year, but
Yeah.
then that was one of the feedback I remembered from before we had the meeting, that somebody, when they provided the feedback to the survey, specifically asked that question, why was the planning board 5 years and all the other boards elected boards were
That was a
like
question from the
3?
survey.
Right, and
Right, probably, yeah.
like the way the meeting went, we didn't really talk about
Too
like the
much why.
feedback of the survey. And it was like, we left it at 5 years, but I think like
There was
all the
no
talk
hardcore.
about it, like, we were like, maybe this should be looked at a little bit further, because
And I
if
think
that's what.
that's why we left it with you, so
Yeah.
it might be an open-ended issue from last
Yeah,
session.
right, exactly.
So I think it
Yeah.
might just be something that if this, and now that we have a planning board member back on the charter committee, if there's conversation and a potential willingness to consider moving to a 3-year, now would be the time, but I think that would be a piece that we would
You
definitely
guys wanna
want to
discuss
have
this right now?
public information.
Talk about it right now, real quick, not to derail the Article 6 talk or anything, Anthony, but let's discuss it right now. From my opinion, when you're looking at something like this, what's the best thing for the town? Is it 3 or 5 years?
I think for me personally, originally I think 5 years made sense because there's a steep learning curve and kind of there was no professional staff or anything. Now we have professional staff, and we know from the past couple elections that people aren't fulfilling their full terms. They're either just not attending meetings, which then creates quorum issues, or they're resigning from their terms before fulfilling the 5 years. And most of that's kind of within that 2 to 3 year range, that they seem to be stepping down from or resigning or whatever. So I think that there could be value, personally, I think that there could be value to looking towards 3-year now, but like I said, I think it's gonna be an educational lift because it's change.
You know, I mean, some of the instability that you talked about, and I've only heard rumors, okay? You have to look at some of those individuals. You know, what was their reason for being on that board? Was it a personal agenda possibly? Or really was it they wanted to be there for the town? You know? And I'm not sure one particular person that was the case. Again, I don't really want to get into too much of that, but so I want to be cautious about using some of that data as far as why they have not fulfilled their term. I think when you look at a position, when you're coming to serve the people, no matter what board you're on, select board, zoning, this one, you know, we are here for the best interest of the people, to do the best we can for them. And if you look at those people, what's best for them in the town. Is it a 3 or a 5-year plan? I really have no idea. I'm just trying to look at this objectively, and certainly want to hear from everybody on this, but I just want to be careful about some of the folks that have been recently on there that I'm not really sure they were really planning board people, you know? And those people wouldn't have lasted, if it was 3 years, might not have lasted 1 or 2 years. You know, they get what they get and they want to leave, you know? You see it in government, you see it in institutions, you see it all over the place, right? So, I don't know. I really don't know, but I just want to make sure we're not pulling to the 3 just because of a few people did that to us, you know?
And this I think is across the board, it's probably more of an excuse than anything. Some people that kind of seem like they may be interested in running for like a planning board position have hesitation claim they have hesitation because it's a 5-year term, like a
Yeah.
5-year commitment versus
Yeah.
a 3-year just seems a little bit more attainable.
Sure.
But it could just be an excuse because it's not like we have people generally knocking at the door for any of the other elected positions either, so it could, I don't wanna hang our hats on that either, but I think that these are discussion topics to what are some barriers to getting involvement and or what's best, to your point, what's best for town.
Correct.
At some point, we had that sheet from Anthony. Let me see if I have it in my notes someplace.
Stability from a longer term, fresh ideas from a shorter term, right? Those are some of the pros, you know, cons and pros, whatever way you're looking at it, right? Some of the results you'll get from a 5-year, you know, if we look at, you know, what's, you know, people staying on there too long, that can be a thing, you know? And I don't really know if the planning board needs that 5 years or if 3 years is enough. I really don't know, you know. I know they meet with some other committees, sometimes building those relationships is helpful. You know, when you're looking at a planning board with the town planner, creating long-term vision, development division, vision for the town. You know, when you're looking at creating new zoning districts, when you're looking at trying to bring in certain types of business and, you know, different things, I mean, those are things that planning boards can have, you know, can use that long-term vision to direct and potentially attract certain types of business and income to the town. You know, should that be 3 years because things do adapt quickly? You know, the world's a changing world, you know, what's hot today is cold in 3 years from now. Just look at like the marijuana facilities, you know, that was crazy 5 years ago. Massachusetts overbuilt, first state in New England to do it. We had, you know, 6 states buying off us, and all of a sudden they all allow it now. It's consolidation in that industry. That's drastically changed. So, you know, does a 5-year term, 3-year term? If you got someone that's hell bent on it in a 5-year term, he's gonna hang on here forever. So maybe a 3-year term is better. They can shift and, you know, realign the vision of the town quicker.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, that would be probably one of my, to me, I think the planning board has to have good vision for the town. They're that driving force for that. And, you know, having people rotate out over 5 years, you know, on a 3-year deal is good, you know, fresh blood for it. So I would probably be apt to do the 3 years personally. Anthony, yep, go ahead.
Just wanted to add just a couple things for the conversation. So I pulled up the sheet. I'm sorry, I forgot
Michelle.
who said it, but Michelle. So I pulled up the what I gave you on. So the planning board has been one of the competitive seats. So again, if you remember when I explained this, so over 1 means that they're having regularly competitive elections. So it is under the current structure, the planning board's elections are competitive for the current size and I guess staggering of the elections. And then I haven't done I didn't look at this exhaustively yet because I just pulled it up while we were talking. But I looked at some of the comparator towns that we identified for Rutland, and they all seem to have 5-year terms. Now that doesn't mean that it's necessarily the right thing for Rutland, or that you shouldn't move to the 3-year terms. I'm just giving you that information, and this may be a time where maybe you don't bring the planning board in, but maybe you send I don't know, some sort of communication to the planning board to see, or the members to see how if they have an opinion about a 3-year versus a 5-year term. I'm sorry, I just want to give those things to the committee to consider.
That's a great idea.
Yeah, or maybe we just, if the focus right now, because we will revisit the chart, assuming the charter passes, it would be revisited after 5 years for updates and everything. Maybe we stick with 5 years and then have the conversation whether it makes sense to go to 3 or not. But I do kind of like the idea of kind of engaging planning board to get a sense from before we just decide one way or the other.
Yeah. So let me do this. Keith, if I could ask you, at your next meeting, maybe talk to the chair, see if you can get on the agenda to make this a discussion point prior to your next meeting and discuss this at your next meeting.
Yeah.
And maybe bring back a report about what the general consensus was, all in favor, 3-5, or split down the middle, whatever,
Yeah.
But I'd love to hear the different reasons that,
Yeah.
that experienced group has, because some of those men have been on there for quite a while. And, I don't know, how's that help the town,
I could definitely talk about it for a while, so if you have a moment, I can.
Yeah,
And
give
if-
us a-
If anyone wants to add quickly, because you guys are already here on the board, but if it's really just the
Excuse me,
question.
how long have you been on that planning board?
I've actually, I'm in year 3, I think.
great, all right.
I got in on 2023, so maybe I'm 2.5
Sure.
into 3. So theoretically, if it was 3, it would be staying on or getting off. And
This will be your final year, so.
yeah, it could be
Yeah.
like, hey, did I get anything done? Did I help the town out? Or did I just get the ball rolling? You could look at it like that. Zoning and how a town gets built, if you're in a town that isn't built up, you could say it does take a while. You can't say anyone's gonna come in, tomorrow, but that's great if you get an application like that. Could anybody be on the planning board and get the planning board job done? I would think, greenhorn or not, if you were to say, hey, you go 3 years, you either get reelected, and then you're at 6. Or if life happens, you leave early, it depends. But government doesn't always move fast, so like things like that, when people are like, it's gotta be quick, or fast turnover. I'm not sure if it would pan out in any different way.
If I could ask you, Keith,
Yeah.
right now, with you starting on your 3rd year now,
Yeah,
do you feel that you've got a ton of gas in the tank and wanna just like you're hitting your stride? Did you hit it a year or 2 ago? Or do you feel like, boy, I wanna be here for another couple years and really, really crank it out? I mean, where are you at personally, if you don't mind answering
yeah,
that question?
I like the position, I like the board, I like everybody that's on the board. And the way we work on projects for the town applications, we take our time with them. We spend time with the public as well as the town planner and the developer. But you have to like that stuff. If you're gonna really wanna do it and you don't know, which was kind of something that I dealt with, I mean, you still have to be interested in legalese, important decision-making things that affect a person's property. And not to say that 5 years really says, hey, are you gonna be more committed than you are with a 3-year? I guess there's some way that maybe it weeds out people that are just like, I wanna do it and see what happens.
Give it a try,
Yeah,
just experiment
yeah,
see if I
and
like
could
it.
that be good or bad for the town? It's hard to say, it still depends on the commitment level of someone. The only thing is being brought up to speed when you do join as someone new. It's nice to have people around you that have been on for a while.
Yeah,
I'm lucky right now, Norm, Tim, Dick Williams. They've literally seen applications for 15 years at the start. Mr. Williams has been on for like 30. I mean,
Dick's been on everything.
he can talk
Mr.
about
Rutland.
every little thing that's ever happened, and sometimes that board's kind of a history board too, maybe with select board, to be able to go back and say, hey, I remember when a bunch of things happened.
Which is sometimes helpful when,
Especially if, say, your town planner, you don't hang on to them for long enough, they're not gonna really know, unless they're just gonna bring their perspective in from all the towns that they've worked for, and hey, I seen that one coming, here's what you do, here's how we, move the football along. So I really like the board, to have to find 40 signatures and reapply. It's not the hardest thing for the 3-year, if it was at 3 years, let's say. My other comment, cause I've watched most of the YouTube meetings, so I kinda saw this one coming. And I guess my only other question is, I know Anthony had brought up just how a city works. And so, for example, if a city appoints a planning board, those positions have no term. They exist until that person retires, leaves. So I mean, they're gonna be on there till they wanna leave, so if you think 5 is a lot, a big city could have someone there for, like Worcester, let's say, it could be there forever. So I mean, it kinda depends on when you look at perspective, if someone who makes, through the survey, does saying it can't be 5, does it come from the same knowledge base that would say, 3's better, I think Anthony mentioned too that MGL doesn't really say it has to be 3, it can be 3 or 5. So then there's the question of, well, if MGL had a problem with it, they would have said it to 3. But with big cities, planning board may still be a free position or a volunteer, if you will, even by appointment, or those people are paid and they're really more professional in their industry, or their prior employment and they're in retirement, so they have the free time to be on a board permanently. So it's an interesting topic. It could
Well, if you
go-
will,
it could
if
go
you bring
either
it back
way.
to that planning board,
Yeah,
I think that feedback, I think that's a great idea, whoever mentioned that, to get
Yeah.
that feedback.
Yeah,
and
we'll have a
bring
long
that back
discussion.
to, yeah, that was Anthony, to bring that back to us, and then, we'll certainly consider that, cause I don't think anybody here has a strong opinion right now otherwise, or are we,
yeah,
you
we'll
know,
hope to
do we
figure
have
it
enough
out.
information to make that strong opinion, so.
And I'll scan this and send it around, and that way, Ryan, you can include it in the minutes, and then
Terrific,
Keith, you'll have it also for the planning board meeting.
Okay,
alright, that's great.
It's just photocopies from
Okay,
yeah, sure.
alright, so we all comfortable with that, and then we'll move along with this? Alright, thanks Keith for that input, appreciate it,
Thank
and, it's, and thank you, Leah, for bringing that up and, getting the loop closed on this one, that's good. Thank you. Okay, so, if everybody's good, we'll move into that Article 6, the Finance Committee.
Sorry to sort of kind of stay on. I just wanted to take just a moment. We kind of already started this. With I know that you guys got a lot of public input, and I think you had like a meeting to kind of rehash and go over the charter. I did want to, similar to what we did about the planning board, was there anything about the previous 5 articles, based on what you guys have heard and talked about since we last met, which was, before the summer, that we may want to amend or change based on that feedback, before we get into the new articles? Hopefully this is not too, I hope I'm not derailing the meeting, but I guess
No,
we haven't seen you guys in a little while, so I'm
Sure, no,
very
good question.
curious.
I don't think so.
I
I don't
had,
think so.
I had one comment, which was kind of unusual, and I don't know if it was a specific to whatever. But they mentioned that there's no process in place for people applying to be on boards, for appointed boards, that there's nothing in place to prevent them from being on boards if they owe money to the town. And I don't know if that was a specific, I don't know the backstory of why that was brought up to me.
What could, if somebody owed money to the
So
town,
say-
what,
Taxes.
Either tax money or water
yeah,
or.
but what could they run for that would benefit, I guess,
I don't know.
Are you just saying they should be up to date on all those items? Is that what you're trying to say?
Yeah, just, that's what the resident specified to me, that it should be something that if they owe money to the town in any way, they should be disqualified from
Serving on a board.
a board.
So it's basically like they'd be vetted out, like one of us would have to be
Like
vetted
that
out,
should
like,
be on
hey, are
the-
you up to date on your
Right,
taxes?
on the vetting process that they go through with
Yeah.
the select
I
board.
think it's
Ooh.
really,
greasy slope,
I know.
greasy slope,
But-
yeah. Greasy slope, I think, and
I'm just telling you what was
I'm
brought
just
to
gonna give
me.
a quick brief thing, and then I think if someone's really in an egregious position where they owe years of taxes, I think, that could be grounds for a board to remove that person from that board. There are ways on everybody's board to do that. Okay, the select board have the power, they appoint people, they could just not reappoint that person if there was
But,
something really
but
out of
do
control,
they-
but
would
I
the
mean, if someone
select
owes
board
money on their
know?
dog license or something,
No,
and someone's got an axe to grind, I don't think we should set that up too, But Anthony, is there anything legal on that?
I'll have to double check. I was sitting here just thinking, I'm not aware of any charters that have anything like that in them. I'd have to double check though. I'm just sort of saying that off the top of my head. What I would say is that, yeah, I'd be very surprised if that were in a charter. And that's the type of thing that if the community or the administration thought it was a good idea, it's something they can implement by policy. So it's easy to put on, easy to take off if that's an issue or something that residents are concerned about. Again, the charters at a very high level, they can still, there's still the room for policymaking and for bylaws. And so I think that as I hear it, I think that's the type of thing that the town can implement at a different level than will be in the charter.
That would go under the select board, that would be part of their vetting
Like
process, and you
appointment
would just make
policy,
your own
yeah.
policy about that. Okay, that's a perfect answer. I can bring that to the person that asked me.
And I can personally say, just as a contractor, you go into a town to pull a permit. And there are a couple towns in Massachusetts that they make us go to the tax assessors
Yeah.
and check and see if all of this institution has all their taxes paid. And I gotta be honest with you, I'm in construction, I'm not a tax collector.
Okay.
There's someone right here, I mean, why don't you make a call down the hall and find out yourself? Like, I can't even believe it, so I think it's really dangerous because how that gets, authorized and managed, and like you said, a policy, boy, that's a real greasy slope. Just the act itself and then how you manage it, that's I don't wanna go down there, especially with this,
That's
like
really
Anthony said.
good, that's a
This
really
is,
good,
So that's just one
perspective.
example that's like,
Yeah, no, it
why
was
are
like,
why is this my responsibility?
I'm just saying, but it was brought to me, I said to the person I would bring it up, and,
Yeah, no, good
I don't-
question.
I don't know if there was some history
to vet
with
everything
that,
out.
or.
I think that some of the confusion with the charter, maybe the pushback of the charter, that people think that the charter has more control over policy
Yeah.
than actually being the
That's what-
charter.
Yeah.
Well, I hope you people at the charter are like not letting the town administrator do this and that. And they think that, we're enacting some sort of policy which we have no control over. Like I had somebody say to
Control,
me,
that is a incredible word today.
yeah.
The power people want with it and how it's, no
I
matter what it
told
is.
somebody before,
It's
I
unreal,
think
it's
we
unreal.
even met, like I was gonna be somebody from Rutland, and I won't say who it was, but like they were like, well, we don't need a town administrator. Like, I hope you guys get rid of the town administrator. It's like, that's not the function of the town charter. But I think there's a lot of confusion that we actually have more control over what's going on with policy in town. So it's more like a clarification, for people that.
Well, like you said, there's everybody we've met along the way, it's been a learning curve, so.
Yeah,
I'm
that's
sure
true.
that'll continue to be that way.
Yeah.
It's,
Well,
keep your guard up, folks.
if people are watching.
Keep the Kevlar on, your eyes moving.
Right.
Hopefully they're watching.
Get on the
and
swivel. All right.
Maybe they watch on YouTube.
Just real
and
quick,
it's-
I know you need to be a registered voter to apply for positions in town. That's about the only requirement. It kinda has some honesty to it, like, hey, if you wanna be on a board, or you
And
do you care enough to even vote? And hopefully that's a starting point.
It's a pretty low starting
Very,
point.
very low.
Good Lord, if you can't put that effort into it, right?
Yeah,
Uh,
But I think that's
We're not
that's
asking a lot.
policy, and I think that even that policy, there's been some conversation about because whether it should be a registered like a resident or a registered voter, because you could be a resident, but you may not legally be able to vote if you're not
You don't own property in town.
if you're not a citizen, you can't vote, right? And so if you can't, but so by default, then by saying that you have to be a registered voter, we may be excluding some residents who are quite active and just because of their circumstances aren't able to vote and therefore aren't able to
That's a good point.
they're legal everywhere and everything, but it's just, so there's some conversation, but all of that, to Keith's point, is all policy. So I think that a lot of this is more policy driven, cause I've heard that comment, I've also heard about like, family members serving on the same board member, or on the same board or commission, or whatever as well, so.
Okay. All right,
Mainly policy, not a charter
issue, yeah,
demand. Good,
okay.
interesting.
All right, so we ready to,
Finance committee.
Finance Committee, here we go. All right, Anthony, if you have nothing else, let's make our way on to Article 6.
Sounds good. Is this big enough for the committee to see?
Yes. Looks great.
So I will go through this, and again, apologies for sending this out so close to the meeting. I just totally forgot about it because we haven't met so long. But we did put together. We're going to go through two sections tonight. One of them is the Finance Committee. The other one is a Financial Procedures section. This Finance Committee section that I put together. Before we go through it, I want to just make 2 points about it at the high level. So number one, I basically cribbed this from your existing Finance Committee bylaw. So I took the bylaw, as I did with other sections, in its entirety and moved it into this into the charter. And then I've highlighted some portions for discussion by the committee, and we'll go through the whole thing, and I'll explain sort of where some of these questions or comments are coming from. Now, the second thing to sort of point out is, in many charters, there is the Finance Committee is actually not its own section. It's usually a part of either in the Financial Procedures section, or the Financial Procedures article as a section, maybe a paragraph, or in the town meetings section as, again, it's just a small paragraph. I think it makes more sense if you do it that way, to put it in the Financial Procedures section. But it's not long. It's definitely not as long as this. It's just a paragraph, basically kind of saying usually the number of the members, their term, and that they're appointed by the select board. And oftentimes it will have a sentence that says something like, the procedures is further defined in the bylaw, or I've seen in some charters by the financial procedures section. So I only point that out to say that you don't necessarily need a whole article, but you've got this robust thing in the bylaws. So, we'll go through it, and the committee can make that decision. And I can circulate some other examples of Finance Committee sections for the committee to look at. But we'll start here with what was in your bylaw. So I just want to sort of lay that sort of top level groundwork. So I will go through here. So again, this is from your bylaw. And it's a very, very thorough, comprehensive bylaw. I'm going to start here at 6-2, 1. No member may act as a town official as defined by, and this is a reference to the wherever it was in the bylaw, in a capacity other than in service on the committee. I highlighted this just because it's an interesting section. I'm not sure if the town had an issue with perhaps members of the Finance Committee perhaps overstepping their bounds. I don't think this section necessarily is doing any harm, so you could keep it, and we can make sure that there's the right reference for the charter. But this whole article or section defines the powers of the Finance Committee, and the Finance Committee wouldn't have any other powers other than the ones enumerated in this section. So in some respects, I kind of think this section is somewhat redundant or unnecessary. But again, there could be some history here, so I wanted to just highlight it. We'll come back to it, and do some discussion with the committee. But that was the first thing I pulled out. This ratification under 2, and I just specifically highlighted subsection I. The ratification by the select board, that often makes sense. One area where I think that there could be some confusion is that there's no timeline for the ratification to happen. So under this language, they could not ratify the person for a year or 2, or however long, to put them on the Finance Committee. So what we usually see is 30 to 45 days, sometimes 2 months, depending on how frequently you expect your select board to meet. But just so that they have a deadline, if they don't either vote it up or down, usually the language says the person is automatically fills the position if the vote doesn't happen within the prescribed time period. So I'd recommend putting in putting in a timeline. And let me just say, if you go the route of making this a much shorter, just paragraph somewhere else, I think it's good to talk through these things because they could even be recommendations to amend the bylaw in the future when you the recommendation sections for your report. But so we'll just keep going through these.
Real quick here though, excuse me, Anthony, but number 2 does say at the next select board meeting.
Yeah, I was just.
So that is within 2 weeks. Our select boards meet every 2 weeks, Mondays.
Yeah.
So, and that first, the ratification vote shall take place at the first meeting of the select board following committee appointments. And then a failure if the select board, to take ratification of such vote, the meeting shall be considered ratification. So they only got one. That's really quick.
So essentially, it should be a article, or it should be a agenda item regardless of who is, because sometimes that's often the new board also, the new select board, 'cause
True,
it's
yeah,
after the election.
yep.
And so no matter what, it should just be on the agenda regardless of the board. And I think that this was some conversation when the some of the conversation with the bylaw itself as far as the timing. But to do it at essentially the next meeting is tough because it's often 1 or 2 new members on the select board and they're coming in and don't really know, but it's more of the moderator's decision as doing the appointments than.
Well, he appoints it, but it's gonna get ratified by the select board.
Right.
So this is saying that they've got that first meeting to ratify those, those that were appointed by the moderator.
Right.
Is that not enough time? I mean, to Anthony's point, you give someone 30 to 45 days, that's 2 to 3 meetings to, just to make sure you catch up. And I don't think that's detrimental to the finance group not to have those
Especially-
persons ratified in 30
Especially
days.
because we have that the terms end essentially the end of the fiscal year, so the current members.
Exactly, they're starting the fiscal year brand new.
The current members are still on the board till the end of the fiscal year, so
Oh,
if there
yeah,
needs to
okay.
be an additional town
Okay.
meeting or there's additional budget stuff or
So
whatever.
those that he appoints starts for July 1st.
Exactly.
They continue out, the existing group finishes out through June 30th.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, does that say that in here, and does that
It
need
says
to be in
that
there?
the bylaw and it says it in
Okay.
and I think that was some of Anthony's questions as far
Coming
as
up,
the
yeah.
Gotcha.
in that, but that was the intent of, that was, I think, a change but the intent through the bylaw was to allow the group that's worked with the current budget to finish out the fiscal year, and if there needs to be, like, Rutland hasn't recently had to call a second town meeting in June because stuff
Sure,
didn't
that
happen,
could happen.
but that could happen, and so if that were the
Still dealing with
case-
that same original committee.
Right.
Gotcha. So this appointment ratification process is for July 1st.
Right.
So,
So really, maybe the ratification should be
I mean,
by July 1st.
if, yeah,
Or June
just-
30th,
yeah.
June 30th.
just June 30th, or, yeah, just give them 45 days. Why
because-
just put in 45 days after the town meeting?
Because all of our
It's pretty much what
appointments,
it is.
because all the select board appointments now have to be done by July 1st, otherwise it defaults to being a vacant seat. And
Gotcha.
so,
Okay, alright,
so if we don't ratify by
So
July
30
1st,
days.
if we don't ratify by
Yeah.
July 1st, they would default be on, be on per the
okay.
bylaw.
So ratified by June 30th.
Yeah.
Is that, fair enough, everybody?
And I would get feedback from the moderator and from FinCom also, but I think that that's a little bit more manageable because this year, like, it missed getting put on the agenda because it was the first year that this was in the bylaw and
Nobody really caught it.
and it was like with the election and everything, it was just one of those things that like should just automatically be, if it's going to be that next meeting, it should just be a placeholder for every agenda of that meeting. But I think it's a lot for a select board, especially if it's a newer select board to come into their very first meeting and have to do a ratification.
So the select board doesn't finish out the June 30th term.
Correct. As soon as the
As
election
soon as they're
happens.
voted out, they go.
Yep.
Okay,
And that first meeting after town meeting and the election is usually like select board reorg. So oftentimes it's a member who hasn't set the agenda, hasn't been involved in the agenda and everything, and it might be a newer member that doesn't, so I think that the meeting right after is a challenge. So I would say maybe put it with the rest of the appointments that by July 1st or June 30th, it has to be ratified.
And then if it's not, they're automatically ratified.
Right.
Because that way there, you gotta go into it having a FinCom,
Right.
the start of the year. Because right now, they give them the first meeting, and then if not, you're on,
Right.
you're done.
I guess.
So if the select board did miss it or forget it, it just, they're on.
I guess the pushback could be if select board didn't wanna ratify someone and wanted to drag their feet, then they would potentially could wait until the last minute to not ratify and not have a full FinCom. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I don't know,
Anthony, do you think that we should bring in the FinCom and the moderator possibly at some point to go over some of these talking points? What do you guys think too? Also, I wanna get your opinion on that. I don't know how deep we wanna go in this.
I think, yeah, the short answer is yes. As we're gonna get to in the next sections, I am gonna be telling you that we will need to speak to the people that help put together your budget and do your finances. So the short answer is yes.
Okay. All right. So if we had some questions through this part of the process, we could bring those up to them, not just the money part.
I would say.
And just,
Sorry.
oh, go.
Go ahead, Anthony.
Just so that I'm clear, so if I was following the discussion, you want the ratification to happen no matter when the vacancy is filled by June 30th of a given year. And there are two ways to handle, like it doesn't say what a failure, it doesn't say what the failure to act is. So it could be, or at least where I usually see it, the failure to ratify the appointment is that the appointment happens. It could be that the failure to ratify means that the appointment doesn't happen. I guess I'm not sure if I heard the direction on the consequences for the select board failing to do the ratification.
So I think the current bylaw is that failure to ratify means that they're appointed, the appointment carries, that they are appointed. And I think that that's kind of the direction that for FinCom, because it's a ratification and not an appointment, that it should go. And I think it was it's been a little bit of a challenge also, and this is a policy thing for the boards and committees, but the current bylaw says that it's for appointments, that any appointments that the select board doesn't make by July 1st returns to vacancy. It used to be that the current members continued until the appointments were held or happened.
Yeah.
And so I think there's pros and cons to all of that, where this is a ratification with membership put before the board by another elected official, I think that failure to act should just be
You're ratified.
you're ratified.
But to Anthony's question and point, what are those failures? So is it just a failure to, where we're too busy, we're a new board, we didn't know we had to do it? Or is it that we're kind of hung up that, we can't agree on approving Chris Senecal, ratifying Chris Senecal? So there's two different dynamics there, and, to Anthony's point, dealing with those, that sends you down two roads.
Yeah.
Well, I just want to clarify, we wouldn't specify, we wouldn't get into like the potential reasons. We would just say,
Yeah.
there's a hard deadline. If you don't reach it, if you don't hit the deadline, there's two options. Either we hit the deadline and you got to go through the whole reappointment process again with that same person or someone new, or we hit the deadline and the appointment happens. What I heard was, if you hit the deadline and the select board didn't vote, then they give it up and the appointment happens. The appointment just
Correct.
moves forward.
Correct.
So the way the bylaw currently reads, it says a failure of the select board to take a ratification vote at such meeting shall be considered a ratification, oh, sorry, I'm reading the wrong thing.
Yeah, no, consider
But
ratification of certain appointments. You're reading it right.
Yeah, and then if the select board, any appointment that's rejected by the select board shall constitute a vacancy, and that's from the updated bylaw, and so I think kind of keeping that language
That makes sense.
might be the best option.
Yeah.
Because I think if the board doesn't take a vote, it could have, like this past one, it didn't make the agenda. So it shouldn't be a holdup for them to not
To be
to have to go through the appointment process. But if the board takes a vote and says, hey, no, we don't want Chris Senecal on FinCom, then that would be like an actual vote was taken and that
Actual
vote
taken
was-
and I got voted out.
Right.
Yeah, I'm off the island. Grab yourself and go.
So then should number 2 the wording for number 2, the ratification vote shall take place before June 30th.
I don't know that the way it's written right now is just not good enough.
Yeah,
Cause
Other
it's,
than-
it's got them doing it at the first meeting, and if they don't, they're in there.
right, but like what Leah was saying, sometimes that first meeting is sketchy.
They're usually all there.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, it's.
you're right. Everybody's there,
I was gonna
right?
say, if you're not
You
at
got
the
a
first
quorum.
meeting, yeah.
You hope.
Just a quick question.
Thank you.
The moderator appoints people, obviously very clear, appoints people to the FICOM, but it only happens at town meeting? Is that the idea, or he can appoint at any time during the year if there's, say, someone leaves? I mean, cause then would that,
I know normally it happens at the end of the town meeting and the people vote on it, correct?
yeah,
Yeah,
Right.
so people don't vote, he just announces who he's appointing.
Oh, okay.
But then section 3 does address how to fill vacancies other than when a term is expired.
Okay.
Um,
and obviously, I'm just spitballing, but town meeting doesn't necessarily happen at the same time, or it has to happen before this kind of June
Yeah,
first thing
it
anyway.
happens in
It's
May.
legally gotta happen, yeah, okay. So it's all, you're always gonna have the same time frame no matter
Yeah.
what, right?
so
Before
our
your
bylaw-
fiscal year.
yeah, our bylaws, and I think even in the charter, we have it set so when town meeting
Yep.
is and when the annual election is.
Okay.
And state law says that by July 30th, you have to have a balanced budget. The town has to have a balanced budget for the next fiscal year. So that's essentially what spring town meeting is for. The
Is
biggest
set
piece
for, okay.
is the budget is
Yeah,
the
you
budget.
vote on those articles, okay.
Alright, so let me just ask the committee this. Do we wanna leave that first meeting the way it's written, or do we wanna put a date or a quantity of days? A, B, or C? And unless anybody sees it any other way, I think those are our 3 options. Leave it the first meeting, make it June 30th, or just say you got 30 days to get it done.
I don't know, I think putting a date in there just makes it look a little more solid. I don't know, maybe it's just a visual thing, seeing a date instead of, because it's like assuming people know the dates. If you're reading the charter and it's like you're assuming people know the dates of when the select board meets and all that, but I mean,
And-
just could be me, you know what I mean?
For me personally, I like kind of like the July 30th, assuming that FinCom, like, I'd like to hear some feedback, 'cause maybe I'm missing something big. But I would like to, I think June 30th,
Yeah.
because sometimes I've been on the board when a couple times we've had a meeting solely to reorg, and that was the only agenda item, where technically per this, then it should be an agenda, it should be to reorg and
appoint these,
and
ratify
appoint these
these.
people, whereas it might not, and sometimes those reorg meetings, like I said, we usually try to keep them a little bit of a lighter agenda because it's reorg and there's new members and it's just.
Is there any, June 30th, is there any reason that these people should be appointed as soon as possible to get up to speed, or is that really just not that big of a deal? It's the start of the year, whether they started in June or July or August, really don't make a difference.
I think that if FinCom continues to meet after annual town meeting, that they could, the new appointees could still attend, but I don't think usually FinCom,
A big deal.
I don't think usually they meet after annual town meeting, assuming
They don't do that either.
that everything is passed. So
Said something about January to May,
is there,
unless on
It's
their.
the heavy lift, right?
Yeah,
Right.
unless otherwise
The
noted,
meat
I
and
think
potatoes,
on
yeah.
there,
so
not on this, but
They
on the
can't meet
website.
to
We good with that, June 30th? Anthony?
Unless sooner, right? Unless.
Yeah, it can
unless
happen
they
the
get-
first
yeah,
meeting.
Right.
but
you know,
by
but just-
July 30th.
They gotta be ratified by then, or they're automatically ratified.
I mean, I'm wondering if we could use kind of, I don't know if it's legalese or just language that you see a lot, like in this kind of thing, but like ratification, first meeting of select board and or June 30, whichever comes first, or like, I don't know. Does that do it?
Cause that would definitely be the first meeting, cause we meet every 2 weeks,
Okay.
so,
Okay.
so,
You're gonna have 2 or 3 meetings prior to that,
Okay.
June
Yeah,
30th,
yeah, yeah. Okay.
right? I mean,
right.
May,
Okay.
you're in May, you get, early
Yeah,
May.
yeah, so there's enough.
So there's
Okay.
usually
Yeah.
probably 3 meetings,
At least, yeah.
right? That's pretty much guaranteed to have.
Yeah.
based on the dates and
We could
times.
say June 30.
Anthony, what, you guys have any comments? Becky, you guys have anything to add, or, is the June 30th all right? Is that too constrictive for a charter? Certainly, point.
I mean, I think that June 30th is probably all right. I'd be curious what Becca thinks. I guess I see most frequently you give a time period from the time of appointment. So I've seen most frequently the 30 to 45 days that the select board has to act. But I'm not aware of any legal reasons why it can't be the June 30th date. Becca, I don't know if you have anything to add.
No, I mean, I would agree, I think, with Leah, who said that, once town meeting is over, that is sort of the bulk of the work that the finance committee does is leading up to town meeting, preparing recommendations, then, being at town meeting. There isn't a whole lot of reason for them to meet after town meeting before the start of the fiscal year. The only exception to that might be if there's a reserve fund transfer request that may come in at the last minute. But even still, those things are not regularly occurring. So I wouldn't, make any decisions about a charter based off in a one-off instance like that.
I mean, 30 days is certainly enough if you wanted to go that route too.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah.
I think it just to put a number
Yeah,
on
just
it.
to-
It doesn't have to be June
Some
30th,
type
just
of-
put a
some type of
number.
goal line to get
Yeah,
to.
instead of just saying like after the next meeting or whatever,
There's
you
a
name
finish
it,
line to this
like,
thing and
yeah.
It
Yeah.
forces them to put it on the agenda at least.
I mean, if they don't do it the first one, it's gonna be on the second one in 30 days. So, I mean, you're gonna have 2 meetings in 30 days, no matter how you cut the month, the schedule, so.
Like I said, I was just saying June 30th because that's how our other appointments are, and
Yeah.
sometimes I think having a date, because town meeting and the elections always vary a little bit. I mean, they're always that same weekend, but depending on how the weeks fall, it varies a little bit. So then just to not have to count 30 days from that Saturday versus you don't like, but it doesn't. I'm not gonna. It's not a hill.
Well, so, cause I'm just looking at this past year, so town meeting's a Saturday. So theoretically, you guys meet that following Monday or Tuesday?
Monday we don't meet because it's election day.
Oh, correct, okay,
So
so
I
you
think
meet
this
the
year we met on
following.
that Tuesday sometime, but it depends how the every other is falling, cause sometimes the every other is the week after.
Week after.
Oh, I gotcha.
And sometimes the board will want to meet sooner to only reorg, so I think there was one meeting one year that we met on like a Thursday to reorg, and that was it. But then, so then the following Monday meeting, we would be going in with the reorg board.
So you essentially 7 weeks. Say 45 days like you originally said, I mean, until the end of the month, 30 days, 45 days, you got plenty of
You
time
just
to
don't,
figure
as
it
long as the
out.
45 don't get you over into July.
That's where
That's the only
I.
concern I got.
Right,
That's true.
and it shouldn't, right? Yeah, 30
You could
days.
say by the final day in June, so that way if you wanna do a Friday meeting, right, you could do it that way opposed to just. Does that make sense? I mean, is it always on like the 28th or the 26th? Is that what was the last year's date?
The town meeting?
Yeah, if you still have
May,
it.
It's like around 12th, 14th, that
yeah, May tenth,
May 10th.
May tenth,
But
yeah.
sometimes it's like almost a week late. It depends how the weeks fall.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
but it's the second one, so it can be no more than the 14th,
right.
Oh, right,
So,
correct.
and again, on the 30-day,
30 day gives you
on
plenty
a
of time.
Saturday to the Monday, that's the 3 days, so the 30 days guarantees you 2 meetings. If you
If not,
don't
it's a
have
week,
it that
right.
Monday, you're gonna get,
Yeah.
cause if you're off the week, you're gonna have, the 7 into 21 days, or if you're on that weekend, that following Monday, you got, so.
I mean, I think it's important either way, right? Like that the select board has the opportunity to review who's being appointed. Not that has there ever been any question about, I mean, just review who's being appointed and yay or nay 'em, without forcing that first meeting to happen, where it gets hectic at the first meeting. So 30 days seems like it should be sufficient.
Let's do it.
Okay, 30 days it is.
Okay.
30 days, Anthony.
Yeah, gotcha. Let me just make that update. Modify language for.
And
I
can
mean, it's
we
more
just,
slack than we've been giving them right now anyways.
Yeah.
They've had the first meeting, so now they got 2 meetings.
can we just make sure we highlight that for
Yeah,
that
for
that
review.
change?
Absolutely,
Well,
yeah.
no,
Keep
and
that
that's
highlighted,
change
please. Yep.
because from the bylaw,
Yep.
because.
Exactly, because even like the other one, you know, like no member be on item number 1 on 6.2. Like, I think that's kind of crazy. I think you ought to be able to open it up to other people personally. Now, maybe there's certain positions that you don't want to mix with the finance committee, but why can't someone on a zoning board or a planning board be on the finance committee?
So my understanding was that that was a very strong feeling from finance committee themselves, that finance committee should not be involved in any other aspects of town, like to the point that I've asked in the past for representation from FinCom for something, and they said no, that they couldn't because they need to only serve,
Conflict of interest, they're trying to avoid.
right.
Wait, ask for representation, what do you mean?
Like somebody
like-
on the charter committee.
Right, like, hey, can FinCom be on charter committee, or hey,
Oh,
we're
oh,
gonna.
to another, to any,
Right,
oh,
like-
I apologize for interjecting. So this is meant to be a prohibition for serving in any other elected or appointed capacity in town.
Yes.
Yep.
And that they don't want any town official, because we have a lot of residents who are also employees and officials in town, that they don't want like an employee who is a resident also serving on FinCom, because
Would the committee mind if I just tinker with a little, because when I read it, what I read and sort of misinterpreted in my own mind was sort of members of the finance committee going and sort of bossing around town employees or doing something that was beyond the scope of their, that was how I was interpreting it. A prohibition language maybe looks a little bit differently. I don't know if the committee would be okay if I sort of rewrite that a little bit to make it clear that they may not run for or be appointed to any other position. I would say I think it's probably kind of written a bit of a confusing way, because I didn't read it that same way when I read through it.
yeah, I mean, yes, Anthony, please play around with it and tweak it, and we can confirm with FinCom. Like I said, that's my
Is
understanding.
this a normal thing to that you can't do anything else other than FinCom in the town? Is that normal?
I think it's
Is that a common, you know?
I'm not sure if I've seen it for FinComs. I have to double check. I mean, you do see that for select board members. You do see that for other elected, particularly for elected positions. I can double check and tell you how many FinCom sections have that same prohibition. I'm not sure off the top of my head.
Didn't we already kind of talk about this anyway in
We
terms of?
did, because I remember talking about, cause I worked at a planning board in a town. And the person came into the office every day, but was the planning board chair, not employed by the town. But then their husband passed away and they needed the income, and she basically had to resign from the planning board so she could be paid by the town. Because she couldn't be the chair of the planning board and be paid by the planning office. Like, I was employed by the planning office, but it was a conflict of interest if she was a paid employee and the chair of the planning board.
We talked about it too, just in terms of single residents holding multiple positions on committees and boards here. I think we've already decided that was something we didn't want.
Yeah.
I don't think, and I don't wanna speak for all, but I don't, in thinking about the other FinComs that I'm aware of, I don't think that it's unusual that communities try to keep their FinCom from having a lot of other involvement. I think ours is
Pretty tight.
on the more strict side,
Yeah.
as far as not allowing representation, like if a board or committee, like an ad hoc or like a targeted like charter committee, like, hey, we want a FinCom representative, and they're like, absolutely not, versus being on planning board or another like Concom or zoning or something, because there's that impression, they feel very much that it's the two separate branches of government and that they should be very.
I can see the elected official, I struggle personally with, if I'm on a zoning board, if I'm on an agricultural council here in town, why you couldn't be on the FinCom, I just don't.
Is
I
that
don't understand
only
that.
worded for it's only worded for the FinCom, not for other, obviously people serve on multiple boards.
And quite honestly, but from an ethics point of view, if you know I am, and it's public knowledge that I am on this other committee, and we're actually discussing a financial article that is going to help this committee, I mean, hey,
You gotta
You could always
recuse
recuse yourself.
you have to. I mean, and I'm gonna make sure you do. You would make sure I did. Like, it's you know where I'm coming from on this. I have to step back. Whereas, if I'm just trying to get this to my buddy over here, you would never know. So I'm not sure if it's good or bad, to be quite honest with you.
Yeah,
I really don't know.
like I said, I
I
don't
don't think
think
it's gonna make a difference if someone wants to, get on that board to do something,
Right.
in a
Where
nefarious,
does, where does
directed way.
it say this? That's what I'm
It's
confused.
kind of confusing, that's why it says, like, see that point section there, it says
Not that I
members.
mind, you don't have to get on too many
Why-
committees.
why no member should be- It says a town
Town
official.
official,
Yeah, but it's like, but it's confusing, well, that's what I'm saying, the language is confusing.
yeah.
Trying to figure out what that says, you name me,
because town official is defined up above, we had,
Yeah.
for the bylaw, this was a whole lot of back and forth is
Right,
what
right.
a town official is, and so it's essentially anyone employed or,
Yeah, like the police chief can't be on there.
right, but it's also other appointed
Yeah.
members as well, so, or residents as well, so it is confusing, but Anthony, if you can try to clean it up and we can maybe have a conversation with FinCom and the moderator, I think in my previous conversations, they were very, very firm about feeling that
Do that
they-
way. Yeah, let's ask them. Let's keep that in there like that. And again, we kind of know where we stand and get their feedback. All right.
I guess just a short comment, there are 7 members, I mean, I don't think you'd have a quorum issue if someone was, but say if it was a small town or a smaller board, then, and everyone was like, well, I'm involved with that, I can't be involved, it could cause a
Sure,
quorum
yeah.
issue, but it's probably not with us, not likely with 7 people at least. Unless all 7, I don't know, it depends. I think
Well,
there's a lot,
especially
yeah.
too, Keith, like when you get into some of the bigger cities and larger towns like a Shrewsbury
Yeah.
or Worcester, and a lot of those, like I know one particular lawyer who's on a tremendous amount of boards in his hometown, and he's the chairman of the planning board, but he has to recuse himself 50% of the times because he's on this board over here with this bank, and they're the lender on this project, and I'm out. I mean, it's just it's very common for these men and women to recuse themselves just because how interconnected they are in the community
I'm just saying, just that.
and the larger
just-
communities.
Just that example right there is, I don't think that's a scenario we would like,
all the time.
yeah.
It's interesting.
You don't have enough people as it is, it's like you can't be recusing yourself all
And
the
well, that's
time.
part of it too. Sometimes I know
Yeah.
they struggle to get people on the FinCom, so just to open it up. I don't know. Anyways, okay, but we'll leave these for input from everybody else. Okay, and if you want to do that language, Anthony, I think that'd be terrific. Do your magic to that, and you'll probably have the answer right there. Anyways, we'll say perfect.
Great. So I'll move on. So I didn't have any comments for 3 other than just updating the citations. But if anyone wants to stop and discuss anything here. As you go to 4, we've already talked about this a little bit, discussing that the appointments expire at the end of the fiscal year beginning, so essentially July 1st. I'm sorry, the terms expire June 1st. So they run for, I guess, from fiscal year to fiscal year. And Becca helped me out. What I looked at that seems a little bit unusual. I've seen different places do it differently. Often the most frequent terms I've seen are ending at like the terms ending at like the town meeting. The term will end at a town meeting or something. So I don't think there's anything necessarily unusual about this. The only thing I would perhaps add is language about what you see in other positions, sort of a comma and then the phrase or until they're I forget now, I'm forgetting the words, but once the next person is qualified or is ratified to take the office, so that you don't have any potential gaps just because terms expire. So that would be the only sort of major thing I would add here, just that the person will still serve until their replacement is qualified or ratified. So I would just suggest that. But I don't know if there's any more discussion just about having it end on the fiscal year versus having it end at town meeting. Becca, I don't know if you have any insights or anything you want to share about the term of the finance committee committee members.
No, I would disagree with you that I would add language that states that the term does not begin, that the current member, the expiring term, end up with a gap. Can you hear
Becca,
me?
I don't know. Yeah, you went out for a little. I don't know if the committee got to hear that last part.
A little broken up,
You guys,
right? A little broken up.
I guess,
I think she said no gap, right? Basically, was that it?
yeah, I was just agreeing with Anthony that you want to make sure you don't have a gap. So you should put some language in there to make sure that there's no gap between the expiring term and the new term.
Okay.
So this was a change in the new bylaws, and I think it was a change that everybody wanted. I don't remember for sure, but I think the thought was that by having the currently seated FinCom finish out the fiscal year is, again, if there's current budget considerations, like that the budget didn't pass or whatever, that FinCom that has known it is able to continue until the July 1st deadline.
Yep.
Also, to Becca's point, if there's any reserve fund transfers or any like end of year stuff that needs to happen,
Clean it up.
they all have the history of, they've been working with the department heads and the administrator and the finance director and everything, so that core group. And the hope is that the newly appointed members if there are meetings, are attending them to get familiarized and everything, but then they start the new year, the new fiscal year,
So July 1's the clean break.
right, because it's the end of that.
The old guard's there till
fiscal year,
June
right.
30th, the new guard takes over July 1st.
That was the conversation.
There's no gap with that.
Right,
It just goes out a little longer.
right.
Okay. I mean, it's a great explanation and a good reason for it. Anthony and Becca, do you have any ideas on did you understand what Leah was saying there about cleaning up some old issues or, budget issues or anything like that that go on out after the meeting, the town town meeting?
yeah, no, yeah, I understand. Yeah, yeah. The only thing I'm thinking about is just if June 30th, again, I'm just thinking theoretical. If June 30th hits and the moderator hasn't made the appointment for an expired term, then that person would actually not be under this language, wouldn't be on the finance committee until the appointment's made.
So I believe and maybe this is where we should update under section 6.2a. There shall be a committee of 7 members appointed to 3-year terms by the moderator at annual town meeting or something to state that where the moderator does the appointments. I'm not sure if it's
I
stated
thought that was
anywhere
in the
else.
charter in the first section. I thought we had
I
that
was,
in there.
maybe I'm not sure
'Cause
where.
I thought that was,
If it is, but Anthony, to your point, historically, the moderator has always done the appointments at the annual town meeting. This year, a FinCom member was the highest vote getter for select board, so the moderator had to do a second appointment after annual town meeting, cause the election happens after town meeting. So that happened, also, but that's a little bit of an extenuating circumstance. I'm not sure how we can have language in there around that, other than saying essentially something by that June 30th or 30 days or whatever.
you're automatically,
And obviously, the moderator and FinCom wants to have a full committee, so doing those appointments are usually priority, and I think a lot of it has been historical done at town meeting, and I think we've asked, there's been conversation about making it an official warrant article maybe earlier in the meeting so that it doesn't get lost at the end of the meeting or something, that it's kind of general business that happens, so everybody's there and hears that that's when the moderator,
but they don't vote on it, but they
Right.
could comment on it.
Yeah, I mean, again, we could still, we're just sort of putting out for a conversation, but I actually think it's not a major issue the way it's structured here. So, I mean, you definitely could still consider, so I'm just raising it as a, potential thing. Anything else, or you want me to keep going?
I think we keep going.
Okay, so this is, I pulled this out because of the phrasing. I think I understand what it's supposed to mean, but I called this out because the way you read it it almost reads like the finance committee could be submitting their own proposed budget for annual town meeting. I'm sure that this is meant to be that they will review the budget as put together by the administration. But I call it out just because of that ambiguity. I'm curious. I'm sure this probably hasn't caused an issue, but I guess I would just want to confirm that the finance committee is not submitting its own budget. I'm sure perhaps it could in extenuating circumstances, but I was curious what the discussion would be around their ability to create, or if you want them primarily to be reviewing the budget put together by the administration and the select board.
Ask that question again next year. We'll see how it shapes.
So this is probably the biggest, most contentious piece of the whole new bylaw. And it's created a whole lot of issues last year and continuing to create a whole lot of issues this year. Because historically, FinCom was very involved in creating the budget. I think they used to create the budget in the absence of a town administrator. And then with the town administrator, there's been a lot of challenges throughout the history of town administrators that the town administrator would create a budget, but then FinCom would essentially not necessarily create their own, but use that as a basis to take and own it, if that makes sense in some ways. And the intent was kind of empowering the town administrator to be, as the chief financial officer, to develop the budget and then have the discussions with FinCom, and FinCom's the one that's like presenting it to town meeting and making their recommendations on it. This has been very contentious and I think
So when was this bylaw adopted?
these bylaws were adopted in February, not this past February, the February before. And so the last budget season was the first budget season through with this, and FinCom, there were some members of FinCom that were totally kind of okay with it and many members who weren't. And this year, FinCom is prepared to take a much more ownership role of the budget.
So this, what you're saying is what I'm hearing you saying is that's not a mistake, that's that's worded that way.
No, I think the way this was worded based on.
Section A, 6.3A, right? That's what we're talking about here.
Yeah, yes,
Right,
yes.
the duties, the committee shall work with department heads and committee chairs and advise the town administrator in refining and revising the proposed operating budget,
Yes.
yep.
And then part B, where it says the committee shall
Committee.
submit the proposed budget at annual town meeting.
Yeah.
The intent was that it would be the proposed budget from essentially that came through the town administrator that had all the dialogue and everything.
It doesn't say that.
Okay, so let me sum this up. Let me see if I'm understanding. If the finance committee is, tell me if this is where the problem lies. If the finance committee doesn't make the budget, if the town administrator makes the budget, then the finance committee essentially thinks they have no purpose.
I think that is the broad,
Is that what some
yes.
people think?
Yes.
Okay, okay.
Did
And
you say
I-
the FinCom or the town administrator has no purpose?
The FinCom.
Yes.
FinCom thinks they have no purpose.
Is
Either
it-
way.
The town administrator, alright,
should
so,
be the town
but
administrator's
let me just
budget,
stop it
Yeah,
right
yeah.
there. So we're gonna rewind here a little bit, zoom, zoom. Back when we did the select board, it's the select board's budget.
Yeah.
The select board, we've already like, in this charter,
Discuss
says,
this, yeah.
yeah, that the TA, the select board
directs the
directs
TA
the
to-
TA to provide a budget, and the FinCom is in the town's best interest to review this and protect us.
Right.
To make sure that this is the best thing for the town's people, not just what some select board wants to pad his buddy's pocket or something or whatever, right?
In my opinion, the finance committee's job should be to say, here's the budget. How did we get to these numbers? This looks okay, this looks not okay, why are we doing this here, here, and here? And then provide that feedback. It's not their job to create a budget.
And I would say also, like,
agree with you, right?
hold the select board ultimately accountable to the financial policies that we have in town, and to ensure that kind of best practices to the best capability of town are occurring. And if there's a need for an override or not, that there's support or not on that side from an earlier standpoint.
All right, and I'd like to just get Anthony and Becca's point of view on this. So regarding FinCom and their responsibilities, in other towns, similar to Rutland's that you both have experience with, is that the way the budget process works? It's the select board owns the budget, directs the TA to create that budget, and the FinCom is kind of that auditorial review for the town to make sure, it's in the best interest of the townspeople and all different dynamics.
Yeah, I'll let Becca chime in. So I'm gonna give you maybe an unsatisfying answer. So I would say historically, it has been that finance committees have had more to do regarding the creation of the budget. The trend has been because town administrators, town managers have become a much more professionalized position with much more involvement in finances, that really the select board tasks their town administrators with creating the budget, and then finance committees have become more of a review and in some ways a check to say we don't agree with this for whatever reason, or support, what have you, just to add an extra independent pair of eyes, and then to present that at the town meeting. So it is much more the trend that the finance committee is a reviewer versus a creator. But Becca, I don't know if you have any thoughts there.
Yeah, I would agree 100% with what you said. I think, well, to answer the question, first of all, about what do other similar towns do, I will tell you that it varies wildly. Like you would be surprised how much it varies town to town. I think that, what Anthony said is true, that historically, before professionalized staff, the finance committee was established, under statutorily, their role was to develop the budget and present it to town meeting before, local government became professionalized. The trend is obviously moving away from that because of the professionalization of staff and the skill set and the increased demands and complexities and laws, et cetera. I think, I think the language that you have here is a little bit vague. And the reason I say that is because it's not clear to me whose budget is going to town meeting. And that's the question that you'll be asked, whose budget is at town meeting? And so I think if you can provide clarity around that, and I like to think about this in that, your town administrator is your CFO. They have been delegated the authority to develop the budget and to work on the budget in partnership with other elected bodies. But ultimately, finance committee's role, as I see it, in a community that is maturing and professionalizing, is less about development of the budget and more about being town meetings' voice and representation through the budget process. So oftentimes, what that means is that they don't develop the budget, they don't present the budget, but they get the first opportunity to amend or adjust the budget as they see fit. And oftentimes that's, that is the authority that you see them given in charters, as opposed to, presenting their budget to town meeting, which is a different thing.
That makes sense to me, and that's checks and balances.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
So they have the ability to amend and adjust the budget, you said, and that's interesting. How does that process happen? How have you seen that process happen, Becca? How does a FinCom adjust that budget that the TA has provided the select board?
Lots of red lines.
Becca, you definitely go, Becca, but I'm just gonna, it just jogged my memory. There are some charters where there's language that says the FinCom has the right of, what's it called, the First Amendment, like when it comes before the First Amendment. So basically, when it comes to the they'll have their amendments. I'm sorry. Well, go on. You explain it, Becca. But there's language in charters that says that the FinCom has the right of First Amendment. Becca, you can go in depth on that.
No, I mean, you're headed down the same road I'm gonna walk down, which is that is essentially, that's the authority that's given in the charter. And I think what you're asking is how does that sort of
Yeah, how does that
present itself?
happen? Yeah,
And usually it happens in the way in that the budget is presented to town meeting, meaning typically, at town meeting, there is a handout and it has a budget document in it, and it has a town administrator's budget, it might have a select board recommended budget, and then it would have a finance committee recommended budget. And it would show, in an ideal world, all the lines are the same, right? Everybody recommends the same thing, but in this, this authority that could be granted to the finance committee, they would have an opportunity to present their recommended budget, and then on town meeting floor, they get to stand up and say, first, we move to amend X, Y, and Z. And that's how the right of First Amendment sort of presents itself at town meeting, on town meeting floor. Finance committee is granted the authority to be the first body to stand up and make an amendment to the presented budget.
Which then has to be voted on by the people.
Right.
That amendment would still have to be voted on, so it's not like they're changing it, they're just asking the town to change it, basically, in short. Okay, because I know right now, I've always heard the FinCom say, we vote favorable on spending $100,000 for a new fire truck, or we are not favorable on this. But I've never heard that amendment.
Right, I don't think we often, I think when we have had those
I like that,
amendments, have been around the school budget, Wachusett budget.
Okay,
But that hasn't been recent,
yeah.
and so usually it's that piece that there'll be an amendment on town meeting floor for, and that's a little bit because the full amount, that's town, regional districts rules or MGL, that the full amount has to be presented anyway.
Yeah.
But, I do like that, and often, I think in the ideal world, FinCom is involved throughout the budget process so that it gets to a point that FinCom feels mostly comfortable with what the budget is going into town meeting, and if there's any major sticking points or something, then that's where those.
Did we have a review process in that budgetary, in that town meeting process, that the FinCom, prior to it getting on the warrant and all that the FinCom had a comment section or a time to adjust something, or say, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Town Administrator, you're out of your mind. We can't afford $300,000 on a new fire truck. What are you doing? Is that process exist right now?
So I think this past year was dicey because select board wouldn't make any decisions as to what the budget was. So everything was really, really cramped. In the ideal world, yes, there would be those conversations. And I think in the past, there were budget hearing, more detailed budget hearings or whatever. And so some of it, I think, is to kind of what Michelle said, is that FinCom has felt that now they don't have a role, where I would argue that I think that their role is even more important now, because now they're not making a budget themselves and then recommending the budget that they've made to the townspeople. They're working to understand how the budget was made and then making those recommendations to the townspeople, or providing input, saying, hey, we know town and they're not gonna go for $1 million fire truck, we need $1 million to prevent taxes from going up, or whatever the case may be, you know what I mean? But, and so I think it's that separation of power and checks and balances to.
Yeah, which one would think is the right way to,
But it's a little bit of it's definitely a shift from how things historically have been.
Yeah.
And even with the town administrator bylaw, before the town administrator bylaw existed, just in the job description was that the town administrator would submit a balanced budget to FinCom. But then in years when there hasn't been money to balance the budget, it's been a push and pull as to who has the authority to make what cuts.
Yeah.
If that makes sense, you know what I mean?
Shouldn't it still be the TA who's creating the budget?
Yeah, so it should be essentially, and that's kind of what I think, in my head, it makes sense, that select board basically gives overall directive of, yes, we're going for an override, no, we're not going for an override because we don't need it or whatever, or we need to make cuts, but we're prioritizing staff, or we're prioritizing these departments, or whatever the case may be, and then the TA develops the budget with those kind of big picture outline goals.
So let me ask you a question right now with the present day FinCom, do you think they want to create the budget, or do you think they just want to review the budget? Like these bylaws, giving them more power to do that, to create the budget?
So the
Is
bylaws,
that what's happened recently in the bylaws? I know you said some new bylaws changed.
no, so this,
Just trying to
this is, I
figure out
think,
which way this flow is going.
yeah, so I think FinCom has felt it previous to these bylaws, previous to last year,
Yeah,
that
no juice.
they had more power to create the budget. Not necessarily that they were totally creating the budget, but they
Yeah.
had a lot more power in the budget development. And
Gotcha.
then last year, it was much more trying to push more to an advisory, but again, the timeline was so messed up because select board would not make any decisions about anything, so it was,
All hands on deck.
Why would the select board, if they direct the TA to create the budget, why would the select board be holding up the
Where's
process?
the bottleneck, is that what
Yeah.
you're
Do you
saying?
watch the select board meetings?
Well,
so it was that we knew going into the budget, we knew a year ago in August that we were gonna be $2 million short. And some members were like, we want the administrator to work magic and just figure out a balanced budget. And then it turned into, we want a gazillion different iterations of the budget. We aren't gonna go for an override at all, we need an override, but what's the dollar amount of the override,
but even if it's not balanced and it's the select board has directed the TA to create the budget, shouldn't he be presenting what he can?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Back to the select board and FinCom?
Yes, and I think that the town administrator had done that in August, September, October, saying, hey, we're $2 million, there's a $2 million shortfall here, so to balance the budget, we're cutting essentially a fifth of our expendable budget. Because, so that was, select board, are you okay with this? Give me some guidance, and select board
Gotcha.
would not give guidance.
So I think we had personality issues more than policy issues, is that what it comes down to?
I think because this is new, I think that it's, and because there's a challenge as far as this is how it's always been done and why are we changing it? Why are you taking this power away from me versus we're professionalizing or whatever. So
Yeah, I understand, no, I understand, yeah, it's a very delicate sort of thing.
Right.
But at the end of the day, the budget doesn't belong to any of them, it belongs to all of us.
right, exactly,
As townspeople.
right.
It's our budget, so however it gets done is it should be, the select board tells the TA makes the budget. FinCom knows the ins and outs of how the town's money.
Alright, so this is an interesting, so I'm just gonna play devil's advocate here. Now you have a year where you have no TA, and you have the fire chief, I believe, standing in. I don't know what his capacity and capabilities are of putting a budget together. But does that vacuum, if there is one, with this interim TA, whoever they are, okay, cause we've had them a lot, does that create a vacuum that draws the FinCom in more?
So I think
And
that
is that
that's,
where they feel like, hey, am I in, am I out? What's going on here?
Yeah,
I think that that's why in the bylaw, and I'm not sure, and I need to go back and reread the bylaw. I'm not gonna find it, I don't think right now. In the absence of a town administrator, it's the select board that's responsible for developing the budget because the thought was, and the hope would be in consultation with FinCom, and FinCom would provide even more of a supportive role in development than, but I don't know that in practice that would happen. And but the thought in the bylaw was that because the town administrator is hired, is a function of the select board, that in the absence of the town administrator, select board still holds that
They're still responsible for it.
responsibility.
Yeah, so they gotta
And
do it.
then it still provides FinCom to offer the support and the knowledge and also the oversight, if you will, and the recommendations to. And we have, now we have a finance director and a finance team that we're which is a relatively new role also. So, you know, that there's a little bit more staff support currently, might not always, you know, but currently there's a little bit more staff support that understands budgets and can do the modeling and everything also.
If I could just jump in for a little bit, it's a good discussion, but I just want to sort of remind everyone. So when we did the town administrator section, we took it mainly from the bylaw that the committee's talking about, and so it does have in there that it's the administrator's job to construct and propose the budget, and it says with the help of the or how's it raised? Proposing it says constructing the town's operating budget with the input of department heads, committee chairs, regional bodies, and the finance committee, and then proposing a balanced operating budget to the select board and the finance committee. And to Leah, which I don't that there's a section here that if there is an absence in the town administrator's office, that the select board takes the role of creating the budget. So that's in what you guys put together in the current draft.
Okay.
And then you all would just determine how you handle that, right? That would kind of leave that decision, how they come about that, to however they wanna go about that?
It would essentially follow the same process as
Yeah.
what the town working with department heads and.
Yeah, you just gotta work with the department head yourself now,
Right,
you know.
right. Or say, hey, to this department head, like whether it's an
Yeah.
interim or whether
Yeah,
it's
the
like
interim
a
or somebody else, yeah.
finance director or one of the
Go meet
chiefs
the-
or,
yeah.
you know, say, hey.
Assume this role.
Right,
Or you could just say to the finance committee, you guys take over this year, you could give that
Well,
authority
I
to
don't,
them.
you know, yes, I mean, I guess technically they can say that, but again, is that going down a road you shouldn't go? Because
Right.
now, you know, the town's losing that objectiveness,
Should not
that
do that.
third party, that audit person, so, you know, they shouldn't be creating that budget at that
True.
point. You know,
Yeah,
they
yeah.
I got no problem with them reviewing what the TA puts out there at the select board, but, you know, if they're that reviewing body, the select board has to restrain themselves from requesting that. And
That's a
I
good
don't know if
We should
that's a
discuss
policy
this
thing
more at
or,
the next meeting.
what's that?
I feel like this is going on into the next meeting.
It's definitely gonna go on to the next meeting, cause it's 8:15 now.
Do we need to get the
Can I
finance
just
meeting?
add
Please,
one
yeah,
thing
please,
to the
Anthony, go ahead.
discussion? Because you know it's a reason why I sort of present the finance committee in the financial procedure sections together. Is a lot of this about what happens like in terms of the timeline and who does what. We're going to get into that in the financial procedures section, which is the next article. We definitely don't have time tonight to probably go through the whole thing, but that will be in the next article, which is the financial procedure section, which talks about who has to submit the budget to who and when and what that group should do with it. So a lot of these questions, you're
gonna
be
come back
answering
up.
them again.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Okay, so with that said, do we wanna let Anthony just keep rolling on here for the sake of time?
Just one quick question,
Yes.
I guess, if it's okay. You know, cause sort of this, like you said, jumps into procedures, but it's sort of or at least section B, committee shall submit proposed budget at annual town meeting. I mean, I don't work on their committee, I haven't been on their committee. I don't know what that, when they feel that it's their creation or the reviewing is still their creation because they're giving it the blessing to move forward. But are they allowed to amend it without blowback from the TA? Or are they just, if they're said, here it is, even if you told me you don't like it, I'm not changing it? I mean, do those struggles, obviously they occur, but is it up to the opinions? Is there an up or down vote on line items? Would it be better to give them that kind of power where if they agree with the TA, then a proposed budget for a line item can go forward, or how do they really?
Well, the select board ultimately dictates what goes on that warrant.
Yeah,
And,
so
you
you
know,
guys
and-
review it. in
And
depth.
again, at the town, they'll say, hey, we agree with this, we approve this expenditure, or we strongly, or, you know, go against it. And I think I've even heard just sometimes one person on the finance committee say, you know, like, I'm against this, or, you know, to that point.
Yeah, they do bring it up for favorable action,
Yeah.
so what you're saying, and you could, but, and again, he brought up the idea that at any point, the FICOM could, at town meeting, go, hey, I want to make a motion to amend something, but I mean, that seems very chaotic. Cause a lot of people are looking for,
People sometimes offer amendments, right? I mean.
Yeah, I mean, not that it's chaotic, but after 8 months, if you didn't know it was coming, if you didn't know someone was gonna disagree with that, then
Yeah, I
It
think if
should've
it got to
been
that
figured out
point,
earlier.
they'd probably already know, Keith, because I think that they would have tried to, negotiate, let's say if that's the right or wrong word here, but
Yeah.
try to come to a better,
I feel like part of
term.
that checks and
But if
balances
the
would
select
be,
board or the TA dug in, right, then it's gonna be kind of a
Yeah.
knockdown, drag out at the town meeting.
Yeah.
if the
you
TA
know.
and select board digs in, that's when it goes to the town meeting.
the
for-
voters.
That's where it's gonna get there to the vote, yeah, and
Yeah.
they'll come up and try to
But in
amend it,
terms of, I
speak
think
their
checks and
piece.
balances, I think the FinCom would get that budget and literally go, no. Figure out how to make that work again.
yeah, okay. Just
Yeah,
if
the
they
select
feel
board.
like if they don't have the respect of the TA, because if some of the opinion of, the contentiousness of it, if they feel that they have the ability, like you said, to line item market and then not get,
That's how maybe I'm making it too simple.
that would be great if it was that simple.
Well, and just to be,
Wonder,
just on the other side of this, Keith, I've seen the FinCom, I remember it was the town meeting that was outside during COVID. And it was something with the town, I believe it was with the school budget. And they strongly said, we don't have this money. So as the FinCom, we cannot allow this town to vote for this, because we don't have the money to pay for this. And
Yeah,
people attack the FinCom.
Yeah.
Like, hey, wait a minute. They're not trying to say don't spend the money in the schools. They're saying you don't have the money to spend on this school.
Yeah.
They're not saying whether you should or you shouldn't. You're just saying we can't spend what we don't have.
Yeah.
And the people attacked them. Some of the people in the school thing went after them and really were harsh at them at the meeting. And so it's a really, more of this is like misunderstanding, like how it all goes and flows more than it is, just.
yeah, and I
Everything's fine until people get involved.
yeah, where do they come from?
That's the truth.
So are we not clarifying that language and moving on from that and going back to that, or
I think
like,
it's a good
Yes.
idea to hear
Yes.
financial procedures.
Yes,
okay?
I think we should just kind
And
of
then we
like
go back
hold
to-
comment here.
Okay,
Let
good.
Anthony run through what he wanted to
Okay.
get through tonight. We're gonna have to come back to this, so
Okay.
let's just hold comments and thoughts and,
Okay.
right, take your notes and let's just let him cut loose here and
Great.
we'll go from there,
I would-
right?
Awesome.
I would just say one word for Anthony. If I've seen flow charts, I mean, they really do just, this is option A, it goes this way, option B goes this way. So I mean, if that's easy to make, I mean, that might help everybody in the end, so.
All right, go ahead, Anthony, take it away.
So, so pulling it back up. So let me go back to where we were. So we're putting a pin in 6-3B. I highlighted 6-3C just because this section of the ordinance, it talks about bylaws generally. When I read it again, this is my interpretation, was that it wasn't solely about financial matters or financial warrants. So you can have, I guess, I've seen some charters where they've used different names, where it's like a bylaw review and finance committee. So I just was raising it to see, do you want the FinCom or whatever you would name this body to review all warrants or bylaws, or do you want it just to be looking at the financial matters? Again, we've got like 8 minutes left, so I'm kind of putting out there rhetorically for people to sort of think about.
We'll think about it.
Just a quick pin, I think per MGL, finance committee is required to make recommendations on all warrant articles, I believe per MGL. I'm not
Okay.
100% sure,
Alright.
so.
Check that out and we'll keep rolling.
And so then the last section the last thing that I highlighted in this section was around the removal procedure. I'm trying to just double check my notes or something. So the thing that sort of I would say jumped out, or I guess, is the sort of process around here, just allowing this sort of I think it sort of contemplates maybe a hearing to determine if their removal is appropriate. Generally speaking, unless I'm missing something, the FinCom is a volunteer body, so they're not getting paid. So I generally, when I see things like this, and this is not that uncommon, I just hesitate to create these legal procedures for the possibility of litigation versus the body where you can potentially just remove someone. Usually I see it's like for cause, which you have here. versus having a full sort of hearing. So that's just something to think about, sort of streamlining this and perhaps removing this public hearing versus just posting the reasons for the removal, which itself can be something that we can talk about a little bit more. I'm gonna, just because it's been such a conversation, I'm not gonna go through the whole financial procedure section, but just on the creation of the budget, I pulled most of this from a charter, because you don't have a financial procedure section in your bylaws. So I pulled most of this from a charter that I thought was very good for a similarly sized community to Rutland. And I'll just go through this procedure section. And I'm gonna go through this, I'm gonna speed run this. I'm not gonna go through all the various dates, but at a high level, it does this procedure section, which again, this body can change or amend based on what it wants to do. But sort of the starting point is that the budget is created by the town manager, submitted to the finance committee for review. The finance committee can make recommendations. Basically create a report of recommendations, and we'll return the budget plus the recommendations back to the town manager in a certain period of time for inclusion on the warrant. And then that report with the recommendations will all go before the town meeting. And I don't know if it says it here in this section, it may be in another section, where it then talks about the right of First Amendment. So we can get into this in more detail. I'll go through this more slowly than the next time. But some of those process questions, this was under the assumption that the finance committee is sort of more of a review body. Again, this committee has the ability to change or modify this, but that's sort of the starting point I put together for a financial procedure section. So I'll stop there because there may want to be some just discussion in the last 5 minutes.
Okay.
I know you're stopping there and just looking ahead, capital planning committee, we have a capital planning committee appointment, like we have a separate bylaw and everything for a CIPC. So just for going forward next time.
No, thank you. Yes.
I do think it's important, I like having like a timeline set out in here,
For the
because-
budget?
Yeah, because I think it would be very helpful if there's a challenging anybody, whether it's an administrator, department heads,
Yep.
or select board, FinCom, whatever, that
Sure.
it's laid
It's
out
right here.
there in a charter and not policy, because they're
Not personal opinion.
right.
Yeah, no, I agree.
It's kind of
And, you know,
Like, if I
to
read
Keith's
it
point
as-
of the flow chart, but like just in words, but not literally a flow chart, but just something that, as Anthony was describing, the TA creates the budget, by such and such a time frame. It goes to the FinCom for review. Does it go to the select board
Right.
at some point for their review and ultimate, installation onto the warrant?
Right.
And away we go, and then those comments, like Anthony said, the reviewed comments and everything is all on there, so.
Right. And I like that this is kind of no later than or by the, because in years that we may be looking at significant things,
Yeah.
it may be more beneficial to have them earlier, or if we are expecting significant changes on a revenue side that we're not gonna get that info until a little bit later, it's nice to have it kind of.
I'm just gonna shoot something out there, and I'd like Anthony Becker's opinion and yours, Leah. But when we do permits with construction projects in towns, what's happened in the last few years is that there's this portal, and the state pretty much uses it in all these towns. And it works out pretty well. Since COVID, it's been really hard to get a hold of some of these officials in towns. They just, they stopped answering the phones and they just never started again. But regardless, they have an inspection, they mark something on the portal. Hey, Chris, fix these 6 lights, in the high bay area. The wash down room was missing some GFIs. So in my next inspection, I'll get that. So pretty much all of the actions and reactions, there's a written document. We upload plans to them. Hey, Chief Tuttle, please, review these. Can I get something back in a couple weeks maybe? Yeah, Chris, I'll get back to you 2-3 weeks. Or, hey, I'm on vacation, give me an extra week, no problem. So all that some of that stuff is there for other people to see, the general contractor, the owners, right? And is there any kind of process in town government that creates this portal system where departments talk to one another like that, where there's hey, there's a record, hey, you know, I said you couldn't have a new fire truck this year, you know, cut that budget down, like, there's stuff there.
No, I think it's to me.
Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah, she's the human portal, right? But something to that nature, that, you know, those discussions, like when Anthony was saying the FinCom puts their notes on something, like it's out there. So even as a town person, I can go on there. Any town person can go onto my permit at Worcester Academy and see all the 2 years of notes from all the inspections that we've been there building the building. So, great, you know, it's all public information, and me as a town person looking to get into the, you know, the warrants, I can see all these things long before you get it dropped on you when you walk in the day of the town meeting. So I just didn't know, is there anything out there like that you guys have ever seen in towns, Becca, Anthony, or Leah, working in government like that?
I'll let Becca, I mean, there's definitely, if we're talking about software, there's definitely a
Basically.
bunch of finance software, very expensive. I guess I would assume Rutland has something, but I don't know, Becca, you've done created the budget, so you can, I'm sure you have more to say.
Yeah, I mean, there are financial software packages that you can use that sort of track the budget process, and you can delegate budget development tasks to different employees, to whoever you want, and sort of track that. I think in organizations that are maybe less complex, have fewer resources available to them, it is not as, it is still available publicly. It's just not always available centrally in one place. And I think that's really what you're talking about. And that's,
Townwide.
everything that a public official does is a public record. So it's all out there and available. I think the challenge is how accessible is it?
Yeah.
And what format, and quite frankly, that varies depending on the complexity of the organization, the professionalism of the staff, the resources available to them, et cetera.
That's a good point. Software's only as good as the people using it, right?
And I think this past year, the past couple years, we've been trying to get all the budget documents online
Okay.
so that they're available.
So there is somewhere online somehow.
And trying to maybe hold more budget hearings, regardless of what the budget situation is. But again, that's only as powerful as the people that are attending them.
True.
And I think, to Becca's point, I think some of the software is quite expensive and cost
Purchase
prohibitive.
and keep up.
Yeah, and especially given that that Rutland still is very, very paper-based for a lot of things, and so to try to train,
Away from that then.
it's a lot of, there would be a lot
Okay.
of wasted resources right now. And
Thank
not to
you. Yeah,
say
no,
that
I
we
just
won't
didn't
get
know if there was
but-
something out there that, hey, could solve this problem and, well, at least help simplify what seems to be a little bit of a sticking point in this town historically.
Right.
And sometimes the software system can, part of having the system, but also a system that manages itself. To your point where, we forgot to put it on the agenda for the first meeting after the elections. Well, software can prevent that, so that's all. I didn't wanna go down a huge rabbit hole here, but thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for the input. If anybody's have any major comments or specific comments, with the town being 8:30 here, I'd like to discuss where we go next from here. So we still got quite a few sticking points here. Do we feel as a committee that we wanna bring in, moderator FinCom people, other select board members in this process to get their feedback?
I don't. I would like to get through all of this and come up with a plan, what we think is a plan or how it should work, and then bring those people in and amend that way.
Okay?
Cause we did bring, what do we bring FinCom in, well, do they come in for what reason?
We brought the moderator in, right?
Oh,
The
yeah. but-
Moderator
but
and
then
some members of FinCom,
some-
yeah.
Because of that bylaw thing that they were talking
Oh,
about.
okay, gotcha.
We didn't bring them in.
It was
Okay,
about
they came.
how
Okay, gotcha,
FinCom
gotcha. Okay.
members were appointed.
Yeah, and the moderating, the town meeting thing with the moderator and
I
FinCom.
think it would slow things down at this point.
I agree with Ryan, and I think next meeting, we dive into the procedures and then loop back to the FinCom and close the loop there. Cause I think we'll have enough next time to do all that, and it'll probably be a good amount of time for that too.
Yeah,
Alright.
I agree, cause we'll have a good idea how we want it to play out, and then who is gonna be responsible for those things. And then bring those people in and say, what are your thoughts on this?
I like the idea. I'm just a little concerned that we couldn't seem to agree on too many things right now.
Yeah.
So I hope we can get to that point where we can get
I'm not so
a
sure,
final
is it
draft
disagree
here.
or is it,
Yeah,
I just don't understand.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying.
Right,
Yeah,
I think
yeah,
we all
yeah,
agree
yeah.
that we're
I
like
guess
kind of.
that's a
We
good
don't know
point.
the process.
You know, we
Yeah,
just
yeah,
don't know what,
yeah,
like, we
yeah.
need assistance to really understand and how it goes, and, you know, but let's try to do that, I think we can accomplish it.
Anthony, if I may, Anthony and Becca, I'm not sure if, and forgive me if this is already provided, but are there other surrounding communities that have maybe a little bit more of an outline as to how their, like, whether it's the financial procedures or FinCom kind of work, just so that we can see how other communities that maybe have more, whether it's more of an advisory FinCom handle it.
So the short answer is yes, we have, if you remember earlier, we created the comparative, so I have the comparative. I pulled them together to create what you have, so I will just pull out the relevant sections, and I can send them to the committee prior to the next meeting.
Great. Okay.
That will be.
And even this, I mean, he even said even this, we don't have this,
This whole section.
so that was from another town that he mimicked, you know, so.
Because I think what, the point where we're at is we've made really great progress because the town runs okay, in other words, and this is the part of the town that isn't run very well right now. And so this is where we are gonna
Stick
spend
with
our
that.
work, right? And I
But
think that's why we're.
And I really feel, as a committee,
Yeah.
we all feel that the FinCom is a reviewing
Yeah.
body.
Asking
I
the
would
hard
argue.
questions, the accountability to
Right?
to
Yeah.
to the town,
Like
to the
auditing.
town.
Yeah, exactly, you know,
I
you know,
think we're
Is
all in
probably the most
agreement.
important part.
it can be, it certainly can be, I mean, you know, obviously the heavy lifting is done by the TA and the department heads to create this budget and, but I really think that, I mean, so I think we can finalize this,
Right.
you know, based on that agreement, you know, and, you know, right there, so I think, you
We'll
know,
continue on.
yeah, let's just continue
Continue
trying
on.
to get something that we can propose to them and say, hey, this is what we think the way it should be.
So 10-9 at 6:30, is that next?
10-9, yeah, 2 weeks, Keith, we meet every 2 weeks on, Thursdays at 6:30.
I will zoom in if I can.
Okay.
I will
Okay.
be out of town.
All right.
Hopefully something fun.
Thank you, Anthony and Becca.
Ladies come on.
Yeah, anything else? You guys, you have anything else online? All
Oh, that's exciting.
Not for tonight.
right, Anthony, I don't know if you wanna review tomorrow. I'm going to Boston to see my daughter compete in a down at the convention center and she starts at 9:20 to 10:20. So if you want to meet tomorrow, I could talk later, like around 11:30, but I can't do 9 o'clock.
Would it be okay if I set it for next Friday?
Perfect. Yep, that works great.
Perfect.
Okay.
Yep.
All right.
Motion?
Real quick, any other business? Anybody? Great, hearing none, great, thank you. Do I have a motion? I got a motion. Do we get a second? All right, all in favor? Aye. Hearing no nays, yeah, okay, meeting's closed. Guys, thank you so much, great work tonight.